we're going to look at it and make sure that the VA is following the law.
Well, of course, if you provide these kinds of services, you are providing all the veterans the full the full range of care for reproductive services as needed, regardless of your ideological position.
Senator, my ideological position is based in the law.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering. America, welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. And to that end, we've been focusing a lot of our attention early on in this new Trump presidency on the Senate and how it's fulfilling its advise and consent function with regards to Trump's cabinet nominees. And along the way, we've shown you examples of how not to conduct an examination during these Senate confirmation hearings. It seems like Democrat senators want to focus on scoring political points and make partisan remarks rather than discern whether or not a given nominee is actually qualified to do the job that they were nominated for. We saw that with Tim Kaine of Virginia questioning Pete Hegseth about his personal life, getting really intensely personal, getting out of bounds, talking about his daughter, of all things, his very young daughter. We saw this with Adam Schiff questioning Pam Bondi about all things Trump derangement and him perpetuating his views that are askew concerning the President of the United States. But we may now be coming up on the worst senator in the Senate when it comes to these confirmation hearings, and that's Hawaii Senator Macy Hirono. You're going to see in this exchange with Doug Collins, who is Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Veterans Affairs, that Hirono doesn't give a crap about whether Doug Collins is qualified for his job or not. She has a willful disregard for the process itself and instead is only focusing on Democrat talking points. And I'm using this particular exchange as a prime example of Hirono's buffoonery. Let's go down into this deep dive to determine whether or not Macy Hirono really is the worst of the worst senators when it comes to these confirmation hearings. But before we do all of that, I'm going to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the shows. And if you like what you see in this video, I almost lost my train of thought there. If you like what you see in the video, please smash that thumbs up button. Like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that really, really good stuff, because all that's going to help this channel grow via that YouTube algorithm. Feed me. As always, gang, thank you so much for all that you do to help grow the channel. I appreciate all of your efforts, whether you're on YouTube, on Rumble, on X. I hope you're liking and sharing and subscribing and following and doing all that they want you to do on their particular platform to help the channel out. I really appreciate those efforts. And for all you newbies out there who may be finding us wherever you are for the first time ever, I hope this video earns your subscription as we talk about Macy Hirono's exchange with Doug Collins and how this is a prime example of what not to do and how not to act when you're looking to confirm a secretary in the cabinet of the President of the United States. By the way, before we get to this video, quick programming note for everybody out there. Tonight, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, me and my best bud, Ross Galloway, we're going back behind enemy lines to talk about the first couple of days of this new Trump presidency, those executive orders that were signed on day one, and other actions taken by the man himself, maybe even basking a little bit in the afterglow on a field of victory after Inauguration Day. All that and more tonight, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, behind enemy lines. Now, without further ado, here's Macy Hirono questioning Doug Collins concerning his fitness for the office of Secretary of Veterans Affairs, as if she would know what it takes to do that job.
I would just like to note that Hawaii also does not have a full-service VA hospital, and like Alaska, has access issues with 7 inhabited islands and veterans living on all of them. So those are all issues that, we're going to need to continue to address. Congressman, you are very close to President Trump, both as a member of the House and since that time. Under what circumstances would you say no to a request or order from President Trump.
You may remember Adam Schiff asking almost a virtually same question to Pam Bondi during her confirmation hearing. It's clear that this is the Democrats' plan. They want to try to create separation between Trump and his cabinet nominees, but also use it as a gotcha to show that these people are nothing more than acolytes of the big bad orange man, and they're going to have no independent thought. They have no brain in their head, and they're just going to do what that bad man says. Doug Collins pushes back on that premise.
Senator, we're dealing in hypotheticals of saying this president would actually ask me to do something illegal. I'm not going to a hypothetical because this president has put veterans first. He's not going to ask me to do anything illegal or outside the current of the law. And I think the question implies something that's not happened, and I don't need to worry about a hypothetical.
Excuse me. I think we need to make sure where, what your priorities are, and you are saying that you will not say yes to what you consider an illegal order.
Is that what Doug Collins said, or did Doug Collins reject the premise of the question and say that he's not going to deal in hypotheticals? We saw Pam Bondi say the similar thing to Adam Schiff. So clearly the Trump nominees have been prepped for this line of questioning that comes from Democrat senators. But Macy Hirono's summary of what Collins said has literally no basis in reality. Let's go back and see what she says here.
I think we need to make sure where, what your priorities are, and you are saying that you will not say yes to what you consider an illegal order.
Does that resemble anything that Doug Collins said in rejecting the premise of Hirono's partisan question? Absolutely not. In fact, part of it was so mumbled and muddled that I couldn't even make out part of it. That's another problem with Hirono. It seems like she's reading from a script and trying to get through it as fast as she can because she knows she has limited time. So she has her talking points in front of her, her questions in front of her. Notice her eyes don't come off the desk. They very rarely do. And in moments when she gets an answer to a question that she doesn't like, she rattles on something or other to try to make a record that doesn't really exist. These are prime examples of hyper-partisanship in this confirmation process that really shouldn't be there. Let's continue on.
Next
Senator-
question. During your time in public life, you have been very outspoken against pregnant people's right to their own reproductive choices.
Pregnant people's rights. That's one of those terms, I guess, that Hirono is holding on to from the previous era of the Biden administration and all the wokeness that was out there. Does she not want to say women? Pregnant people? Who gets pregnant? Do men get pregnant? Do men have the biological ability to get pregnant? Or my brain's glitching right now to think of another alternative here. Is it women who want to live as men? I mean, all of the different terminology. I'm not hip to the lingo, kids. Explain that one to me like I'm a 6-year-old so I can understand what we're talking about here when it comes to pregnant people.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
In the role of secretary, you would be overseeing care for veterans and their loved ones across the entire ideological spectrum. Would you rescind the interim final rule enacted under the Biden administration that allows VA to provide abortion counseling and abortions in the case of rape, incest, or where the life or health of the veteran would be endangered?
What is she talking about?
All right, gang, we're about to get a little wonky here. Macy Hirono is talking about what's called an interim final rule that was passed by the Biden administration's Department of Veterans Affairs that is debatable at this point whether or not it is actually applicable and enforceable given the laws passed by Congress concerning the Department of Veterans Affairs and what services they can provide. Here we go. Back in 1992, Congress passed the Veterans Health Care Act, It's commonly referred to as the 1992 Act, and that gives statutory authority to provide healthcare services to veterans. Within that 1992 Act, there is a section called Section 106 that states in furnishing hospital care and medical services under this section, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs may provide to women the following health care services: general reproductive health care, but not including under this section infertility services, abortions, or pregnancy care, including prenatal and delivery care. So the law passed by Congress has a specific exclusion preventing the Department of Veterans Affairs from providing certain general reproductive health care. Fast forward now to the Biden administration, and they passed this regulation, this interim final rule, that would sort of get rid of that exclusion in the law. Now, I can tell you just from being a lawyer that when it comes to authority, statutory authority certainly rules over a regulation or a rule promulgated by an agency. 9 times out of 10, the rule will fall to the law. So Macy Hirono is asking the presumed next Secretary of Veterans Affairs whether or not they will continue to follow this interim final rule, or if they will disregard the rule.
Everybody got that?
This is obviously a matter for debate, and it seems like Hirono was actually trying to get to a very esoteric issue that's really a hot button for her constituents on the left.
Thank you, Senator. As we just discussed this just a moment ago, the VA Act in 1992 specifically forbid the VA from doing abortions.
Well, you do, excuse me. Let me just clarify something for you.
Senator, I'll be happy
You
to answer
refer
your
to a
question.
law that actually is being pretty much clarified by this interim final rule.
Clarified? No, it actually contradicts the law. The interim final rule that we just talked about tries to overturn the law without going back to Congress to amend that law. Macy Hirono is trying to see whether Doug Collins is going to go along with this regulatory scheme created by Biden and his administration, and it certainly seems like Doug Collins' answer is he's going to follow the law. She's going to try and make this an ideological argument, a partisan argument, rather than an examination of Doug Collins' fitness to do the job.
And there is, as you know, debate regarding what the law allows. I believe the law allows this rule to be enacted. And my question to you is whether you would rescind this interim rule that would allow the providing of abortions
And Senators, I was
to
trying-
veterans who, under circumstances of rape, incest.
While Hirono's slurring her words here, let me just point out that it's clear she doesn't care what Collins thinks. Every time he tries to answer, she just keeps talking and talking and talking, as if she's going to convince anyone further about this particular issue. Now, again, people in the public, I don't expect you to understand the nuance of regulations and the CFR and how they interplay with actual federal law that has been passed by Congress, signed into law by the president, and all that. That's not the point here. The point here is she wants to paint Doug Collins as a bad guy that is going to be taking away reproductive rights. It's the same theme that Kamala Harris was doing during her campaign. It's the same flawed strategies going forward. Macy Hirono is going to die with these talking points from the Democrat Party until she receives new talking points from the Democrat Party.
Or where her life is endangered. Would you rescind the rule?
Senators, I was answering your question. We will look at this rule and see if it complies with the law. As you just said in your own answer, it is a debatable issue. We're going to look at it and make sure that the VA is following the law.
Well, of course, if you provide these kinds of services, you are providing all the veterans the full the full range of care for reproductive services as needed.
But the law says that the Department of Veterans Affairs will not be carrying out a complete service of general reproductive care because there's a specific exclusion to some of that care.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
This is not Macy Hirono being dumb. She's being willful in disregarding the law, and she's trying to make the argument that, oh, well, we can just ignore that and go with the interim final rule and the regulations that were passed by the Biden administration. That's not how this works, Senator. That's not how any of this works.
Regardless of your ideological position.
Senator, my ideological position is based in the law, and I will follow the law in this regard. And if you're
That's all that needs to be said by Doug Collins, but I think he's got a little bit more to say here, and I'm very interested to see this. I think you guys should pay attention to this too.
your questions, I would have loved to have sat down and talked with you before this hearing, and we could have explained this because I believe the law is clear.
Asking you under oath, do you
Macy Hirono did not meet with Doug Collins. Now, you may remember from the confirmation hearings of Pete Hegseth, he didn't meet with Democrat senators, or really any senators except the chair of the committee, before his confirmation hearing. Doug Collins was making the rounds, much like Pam Bondi was, to members of the respective committees to have discussions before this hearing so that everybody knew where everyone stood before the hearing itself. Macy Hirono, I guess, couldn't care less what Doug Collins had to say. After all, he's nominated by the Bad Orange Man, and she doesn't want to be talking to him or be associated with him in any way, shape, or form. She only cares about resisting. That's the problem here, folks. Macy Hirono is a partisan hack. Not in the media sense that I discuss in my book, which I'm not plugging right now, but in the sense that she only cares about the partisan laundry. She only cares about scoring points for her side. She doesn't care about good governance at all. She doesn't care about good faith discussions about whether a law should be amended or whether or not an interim final rule should be adopted and used and interpreted in such a way. She only cares about the game between the tribes. That's what she's showing off here now. Let's keep going.
believe that world-class care, quoting you, includes a full range of reproductive services?
I believe that the range of care provided at the VA is following the law and the intent of this body as it is set forth in the law.
Like talking to a brick wall.
Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show.
And if the way you interpret the law will disallow services to 2 million women veterans in the U.S., including 13,000 in Hawaii, you would do so. That's what you just testified.
As that I have just testified, and looking at this, I will take a look at where the law stands. And as you also testified in your questioning, you said it had been a debatable topic that was just changed 2 years ago.
Well, I certainly hope
And we
that
will
you
look at
would
that, and I
interpret
will-
there is a rule that actually interprets the
I
law in a
understand the rule.
particular way, and you're saying that it all depends.
What did that mean? Oh, there's a law there that interprets it this way, and you're disagreeing with that law. Well, no, it's not a law. It's a rule. It's an interim final rule that has not been completely adopted. And Doug Collins is saying that he's going to look at it. Macy, move the hell on here. My goodness, this is why she's the worst senator when it comes to these confirmation hearings. She again mischaracterizes and tried to spin what Doug Collins is saying, even though he said it 5 times over. And she's coming from an ideological perspective without regard for rule of law. You would think a senator would want to propose an amendment to the 1992 Act and say that that whole exclusion, we're going to get rid of that and let people vote on it. Let the Senate vote on it. Let the House vote on it. Let the president weigh in on that. Instead, Democrats like Hirono love to do an end around of any law they don't like. And they do that In one way, through these regulations that, if left unchecked, can really become not only burdensome to government, but can also distort the plain meaning of the law passed by the federal government, which, by the way, a department of the executive doesn't have the power to do.
Understand the rule, ma'am.
VS has over, and you're not responding to whether or not you will rescind that rule, which provides care for thousands of female veterans.
Senator, I'm
VA
trying
has
to
over
attempt to answer your question.
450,000 employees and contracts with hundreds of thousands of private providers across the country. Can you explain what roles you have held that would have prepared you for leading such a large organization?
I'd love to, Senator.
He was ready to pounce.
I have been a part of this body in which I have actually overseen and working through votes and working through bills that actually affect the VA's operation from a day-to-day operation. I understand the policy of the VA intimately by being a member just like you. I've also spent time in the military working with many individuals and currently serve at the Warner Robins Air Force Base in Africa Command of our chaplain's office with over 656 personnel working across different MAGCOMs, handling personnel decisions. I've also been a leader in many other ways, and I believe that leadership is how you deal with this. You deal with leadership and putting good people in good positions to make sure that you have
Thank
a
you.
workforce that knows that they have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
See how Hirono wanted to cut off that answer at the end because her time is expiring? She knew she wasn't going to get the last word in this examination here. Doug Collins did a great job of not only outlining his experience, actually something that matters with regards to this confirmation hearing, whether or not he's qualified for the job, but in doing so, equated himself with Hirono as a fellow member of the legislature who has served in Congress, and then going beyond that, showing his military experience as well, something Hirono does not have at all to speak of, at least not that I know of. So now we've seen yet another prime example of what not to do in a committee hearing, and we sort of see it all rolled up into one with Macy Hirono. She's not listening. She's working off a script. She doesn't have the ability to really think on her feet. She attempts to reframe answers to questions in a way that makes the witness look bad, even though the witness 9 times out of 10 didn't say anything near what Hirono was saying. She slurs her words and sometimes not coherent, not understandable. And she is playing only to a partisan base. She has no interest in getting down to qualifications for a job or the decision-making ability of the nominee or anything like that. She's there to do a hit job, much like Tim Kaine tried to do a hit job, much like Adam Schiff tried to do a hit job. All these Democrats are looking to do is to damage these nominees in some way, shape, or form. And thus far, I don't think they've made a lot of headway in that respect. But hey, listen, that's just my opinion on all of this. I want to know what you think about not only Macy Hirono, but Tim Kaine, Adam Schiff, anybody else you've seen, even Republicans in these Senate confirmation hearings that you think are just acting buffoonishly and have little to no regard to actually providing us with a strong executive. Let's talk about that in the comments. And as always, like and share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. I'm interested to hear what all of you have to say about these tactics in this video and any other shenanigans and buffoonery happening every day this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.